Good afternoon. TJ, our president, earlier this summer had the distinct opportunity to interview Dr. Cherniak, the 2021 Walt Whitman Award. She's volunteered for Out To Innovate for some time. Unfortunately, she did have some issues with her video, so I apologize. And here it is.
Both I and the board really appreciate all the work you have done. And so coming up on this event at the end of July will be a chance to celebrate you and all of the other awardees. One of the things that I was intrigued by when I got to see your academic biography, professional biography, is that you had started out in physics and shifted to another field. So can you talk about what initially interested you about physics and then why you chose to make a change?
Well, I was always interested in science. I mean, even from even in elementary school, and it sort of became a process of elimination with science I decided to go into because I took like a summer course at RPI in chemistry, and it didn't really excite me as much as physics. And biology sort of, I mean, I enjoyed the classes, but it wasn't really, I thought, what I wanted to do. And then I got into physics as an undergraduate, and I did develop an interest in geology. But I went to Union College, and they didn't, at the time, they do now, but at the time they did not have a geology department to speak of. So I took some independent study with the one geology professor they had there, and then I went on to grad school, and I thought I'd continue in physics. And it happened that my thesis advisor was collaborating with some geologists, and so he had a project that he wanted a student for. So I got into working on that. So it was basically doing material science on geological materials.
Yeah, I mean, part of what interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think of there are certain fields I think of crossing and connecting very well, but with geology, I would have guessed it was more they would go looking for chemistry collaborators. So what was it about kind of the physics piece that could link up with the geology piece? What did you, maybe just explain what you did for your thesis?
Well, I've sort of it's stayed in the same general area for most of my career. It's really studying diffusion of various elements in geological materials. So it's mostly laboratory based experiments. I mean, it's really solid state physics on geological materials. So we're studying sort of fundamental things which are applied to real rocks. So I don't do field work. So it's really laboratory based.
Okay, all right. And so what is a typical experiment in that field like? Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine you were able to introduce elements and watch them diffuse, or what are you really able to do to study that?
We sort of do that. In some cases, we run experiments at higher temperatures than geologic interest, just because we have very limited laboratory timeframes. I mean, we don't like to do experiments much more than a few months, given constraints on wanting to publish things and get results. So, but sometimes, depending on the material, we do work in the range of geologic interest, the temperature range. But then otherwise, we may have to extrapolate down some hundreds of degrees. But yeah, so we also work with methods that have very short depth scales they can measure, so very good depth resolution. So we can do experiments and measure things on submicron scale. So that helps to be able to, because a lot of the diffusivities are very, very slow.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
So the fact that you can measure that small distance, even if you're measuring a short time, you're still able to capture the rates that you're interested in.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So most of the analyses are done at the ion beam lab at the University of Albany, where they have a linear accelerator. So we use both Rutherford backscattering, spectrometry, and nuclear reaction analysis to make those measurements. So we can look at things on the scale of tens of nanometers.
So I'm interested how you first found out about Nagelstep, and then what led you to join and volunteer with it.
I read about it somewhere. Now I can't recall where. It was some book I was reading, and they were referring to someone who was a member. And so I looked it up, and it sounded like definitely an organization I would like to join. And then I had joined, and then decided I would like to be more active and help out with the organization and its mission. So I started volunteering in different capacities, and then the position for the newsletter was open. So I had already been editing some other newsletters for other groups and doing proofreading and copy editing for another publication. So I'd had experience doing that, and it was something I enjoyed doing. So I offered to do that.
Okay, all right. And do I remember right that you served on the board for several years before
I did,
taking on the
yes.
newsletter as well? Yeah. Okay.
And
all right.
then I was on some of the scholarship committee for a time as well.
Okay. And did you ever make it to any of the Out to Innovate summits? I was trying to remember that would have been probably the only place we had
No,
met.
unfortunately, I have not. I mean, it's sort of been bad timing. And then, I mean, I've been dealing over the past several years with some health problems with my parents since
Okay,
passed
all
away.
right.
But there were times when it was just difficult to travel.
Sure. Okay. All right. And so you'd mentioned that part of why you took on the newsletter was that you had been doing that for some other organizations. Are those running organizations? Because when I was researching your name online, I was finding a Daniele Cherniak who seemed to do a lot with like marathon running.
Yes, yes. I mean, one of the organizations is the newsletter from my local running club. And another one is the newsletter from my local historical society. So
Really? Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
yeah, so I proofread for the running club, and I have for like quite a few years. And then
Okay.
I'm editor for the Historical Society's quarterly newsletter too.
Okay. All right. Okay. So is there something, I don't know, I mean, I'm really impressed that you volunteer for that many organizations and you really give back that much. Do you feel like there's something that has drawn you towards that volunteer work?
Well, I always think it's important to give back and just to help in any way I can, because there's so many people out there doing good work, and I'd like to support that and just help make a positive difference.
Okay. So some questions about sexual orientation and gender identity. So you identify as lesbian, is that correct?
Well, I mean, sort of like, I guess, sort of gender non-conforming, I guess.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Queer, okay. I don't know. It's there's so many different terms. It's sort of hard to say, well, yes, this is it.
And then I don't know if you have much chance to interact with students or to mentor, but one of the audiences for these awards are undergraduate and graduate LGBTQ students who are in STEM. Is there any advice or guidance you would offer them if they were considering a career in STEM?
I guess I would say follow your interests and figure out what you'd like to do, and so that will, like, for your career, and what excites you in the fields, and then just be yourself.
Is there anything else that you would like to share or to just kind of offer or talk about?
But I guess I would just like to say thank you. Thank you to the organization. Thank you to all the great people who are working in it. And it just, I mean, I'm really honored.